"Who gave you permission to speak Italian here?" It wasn't the first time Layla had heard that, but this time it rang out before dozens of people, spoken by her very own superior. Her heart felt as though it were being squeezed, not because she was insulted, but because of the painful familiarity. She had kept silent when called a servile wannabe, and had stifled her tears while scrubbing the restroom floor after scholarship classes. But today, she was no longer the Layla who bowed her head. And she never expected that just minutes later, a millionaire would quietly step forward and her life would change forever. Layla grew up in neighborhoods where people didn't talk about the future. In Southside, Chicago, the only lesson you needed was how to survive. She knew which alleys to avoid when gunshots echoed at night, could read a stranger's expression in seconds, and understood all too well that dreams weren't made for someone like her. Her father vanished when she was 9. One morning, with no farewell, no note, no trace, only an unwashed coffee mug and a hollow look in her mother's eyes, stretching through Layla's childhood like spilled ink on white cloth. Her mother, the frail woman with calloused hands, silently became the sole pillar of their home. Working as a laundress in 3 hotels at once, she never complained. Yet Layla always noticed, after each load she dried, her mother would sit staring for a moment, seemingly gathering the last reserves of strength from the passing day. Dinner times were quiet. Clothes never looked new. But Layla had one treasure: books. And something remarkable happened. Amid a neighborhood drowned by screeching hip-hop beats, she found herself enraptured by Vivaldi, reading Dante in a bilingual Italian-English translation borrowed from the public library. Those classical words weren't mere knowledge. They were her lifeline in a world bent on dragging her down. When Layla received a full scholarship in linguistics at NYU, she didn't cry. She only stood still, clutching the acceptance letter as if grasping a sliver of her newly opening future. New York was overwhelming, but she loved it. She loved how the city never waited for anyone just like her. For her first 3 years, Layla studied as if time were running out, and it truly was. In her final year, her mother fell ill, stage 4 cancer. Without hesitation, Layla packed everything, emailed to defer her studies, and booked the cheapest flight back to Florida where her mother lived with her aunt. She knew she might return to school one day, but her mother would not. To cover medical bills, she took a server's job at La Rosa Mera, an Italian restaurant by the sea. Guests ordered entrees amid icy prosecco and sunsets gilding the water. They came to eat, but Layla came to live. At first, all she felt was exhaustion, legs aching from 8th shifts on her feet, rude customers, judging glances when they learned she'd been to college as if touching a dream then still washing glasses made her more pitiable than respectable. Yet, as always, Layla learned to turn her temporary stage into her arena. She listened to the Italian chefs chatting in the back kitchen, remembered every tone, every lip movement, each word rolling like music. She memorized the menu in both English and Italian. But no one knew she wasn't merely learning a language, she was relearning herself, learning to hold on to her dignity when no one reminded her of her worth, learning to stand tall when everything weighing on her shoulders threatened to topple her. Each day, she walked through the restaurant door as if entering an invisible exam. No one noticed but for her. Every step composed a symphony where the opening movement was silence, and the crescendo was her very existence. Layla didn't need anyone to save her. She only needed a chance for someone to see her, not through her skin or her uniform, but through the pride she preserved, even in the lowest of places. But would anyone ever see the most beautiful part of her? When that beauty was hidden by work the world seldom values?
Welcome to 30 Millionaire Stories, where success meets solitude, and every story heals a hidden wound. Subscribe and discover the heart behind the fortune.
The second floor of La Rosa Mare went largely unnoticed. It was a secluded area overlooking the sea, reserved for guests who did not need noise but still wanted to see everything. In a hidden corner near the glass window sat a man in silence. He did not order food, only an espresso. No sugar, no ice, much like his own demeanor. Unyielding, taciturn, with no need for sweetness to be palatable. Benjamin Rhodes, a name seldom spoken aloud outside finance circles, yet revered among philanthropists and Ivy League schools as a legend. He did not deliver long speeches at conferences, nor run ads in the press. But every student of color who received a language scholarship from his Rise Beyond Foundation knew this. Their dreams found something to hold on to because of him. He had once been them raised in the Bronx, living on instant noodles and borrowed library books, mocked as the black kid who reads Shakespeare. Perhaps that is why Benjamin did not believe in resumes. He did not seek prominence on paper, but rather the traces of resilience forged through life qualities visible only when one did not know they were being watched. A linguistics professor at NYU, previously funded by him, had whispered about a student named Layla. Not dazzlingly brilliant, but there was something about her that could not be ignored. Something reminiscent of himself. Benjamin asked no more. He requested her address, then vanished as always. And this morning he arrived. No motorcade, no assistant. Just a man with sand-streaked shoes and eyes sharp as blades hidden behind sunglasses. Layla had no idea he was there. She rushed about as usual, walking with steady steps, her face showing not a hint of fatigue. But the way she leaned to speak with the elderly Italian couple, the delicate respect she showed by using their mother tongue, and above all, the way she maintained her composure when a coworker hurled insults at her before dozens of onlookers, these drew his attention. Not everyone can remain calm under mockery, but few can preserve serenity without it becoming resignation. Layla stood on that razor's edge. She did not stiffen to fight back, nor did she bow in acceptance. She needed no words. The way she resumed her work, gently placing a glass of water before the guest, as though nothing had happened, was itself the answer. Benjamin gave a slight nod. After years of observing people, he had learned this: not everyone who knows how to resist is trustworthy. But those who uphold their dignity in silence, those are the ones who can be counted on when the storm arrives. He jotted her name on a small slip of paper and folded it into his pocket, not to remember her name, but as an inner confirmation. To Benjamin, people like Layla needed no further trial. Life had already tested them. He only needed to see who would still be standing afterwards. That afternoon, he left before Layla even looked up. No handshake, no compliment. Yet, in his mind, the gears had begun to turn. The door to opportunity does not always swing wide open. Sometimes it merely shifts just enough for someone quiet and profound to step through. And he knew, someone like her doesn't need to be pushed. She only needs to be seen. But is Layla ready to walk through a door she has only dared to observe from afar her whole life? Wait one small favor. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy inspirational stories. And don't forget to leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you live. I always love seeing the world come together to share a meaningful moment. That morning, the Florida sky was startlingly clear, as if everything was poised to change. Layla received a call from the management office. No one explained why, only, "Someone wants to see you." Right now, on the rooftop. She straightened her apron, hastily wiped the coffee stain on her sleeve, and took the back stairs where no guest ever ventured. Benjamin was already waiting. No introduction needed. One look from him was enough to throw Layla's heartbeat off by half a beat. He spoke without flourish or delay, offering a proposal that left her stunned. She would become the senior cultural advisor for Lux Edge, a hotel chain restructuring after a media crisis over racial discrimination. This role was more than a position. It was a symbol of change, and Benjamin wanted Layla to lead it. She barely had time to feel joy. Her emotions were neither shock nor happiness. It felt as though someone had opened a grand door, but she remained on the threshold, afraid that stepping through would betray her own heart. But he gave her no time for doubt. "I've seen enough," he said, offering no further explanation. To him, her composure in the worst moments was the strongest application of all. News of Layla's appointment spread like a small flame catching in a dry room. Staff whispered. Some applauded. Others were stunned. And of course, there were those who could not accept it. Whitney was the first to feel the heat. The interim HR manager role she had her eye on was now, in her view, stolen by Layla, a girl who had once cleaned tables under her supervision. She said nothing, but her actions were swift and icy. A few days after the announcement, an internal video circulated showing Layla, a year earlier, kneeling to scrub a bathroom floor in a worn uniform, sweat soaking her back, a bucket beside her as living proof of her lowly status. It didn't stop there. The HR inbox began to fill with anonymous, malicious emails. "Who is she? Someone who cleaned toilets teaching us about culture? I refuse to work under someone who can't even keep herself clean. Is Lux Edge playing a cheap PR stunt?" Layla said nothing. She simply read them, then closed her laptop. Those words were not new. She had seen, heard, and lived through them before. What surprised her was not the cruelty, but Benjamin's silence. No reply email, no public defense. Doubt began to creep in. Unnamed questions wrapped in her mind. Does he believe in me? Am I truly deserving? Or am I just a safe choice for PR season? Then one afternoon, exhausted, she left the office early and found Benjamin waiting by the parking lot. No secretary, no scheduled meeting. He simply looked at her for a long moment, then gently asked, "They say you used to scrub toilets. Are you ashamed?" Layla lifted her chin, but before she could answer, he continued, "I don't care what you did before. I just want to know, where do you stand now?" That was all. No further explanation needed. Layla understood. He didn't need to shield her from the mud. He knew she had emerged from it with her integrity intact. All he protected was his belief in her strength. That night at home, Layla looked at herself in the mirror. She no longer saw the girl who once bowed her head to scrub floors. She saw someone who had learned to stand tall even amid the whispers that tried to pull her down. But when blades come from behind, can someone once only used to bowing learn to face them head on? The lights in the press conference room weren't as dazzling as people imagined. They shone with a cold, steady formality. The rows of seats glittered with camera flashes, representatives from major news networks, travel magazines, and nonprofit organizations, all focused on the same newly announced name against a silver backdrop: Culture First, a human rebuild initiative. Center stage stood Layla, alone. No podium, no signage, only a handheld microphone, a simple black dress, and eyes fixed straight ahead. She did not begin with, "Thank you," nor did she launch into expected jargon like restructuring or workforce diversification. She began with silence. The room almost held its breath. "Perhaps it would be easier," she began, "if I read a prepared speech." A few exchanged glances. Some bent over, typing notes on laptops, but Layla paid them no mind. Her voice was neither loud nor harsh, just clear enough that each word sank not through ears but into hearts. "I speak 3 languages, but what has taught me most are the moments when I said nothing." A brief pause. The atmosphere shifted. People looked up. "I have stood all night long in a hotel restroom. scrubbing each grout line with a brush because a guest complained it wasn't clean enough. I was once told by management that I didn't fit in simply because I pronounced an Italian dish too fluently. I've heard people laugh behind my back. A server teaching us about culture? Layla did not shed tears. But what stunned the audience was that she didn't need to. There was something in her tone, both as soft as silk and as solid as stone, as if each sentence walked on feet that had passed through fire, requiring no further proof. She did not brandish her story like a badge of honor. She simply laid it out, like an old wrinkled fabric on a table, faded, imperfect, but undeniably real. And in a world saturated with spectacle, that unguarded honesty rang like a rare bell everyone wanted to hear. Culture First, Luxedge's hotel system transformation campaign was announced in that respectful silence. Layla didn't rally cries. She didn't refute previous criticisms. She made no mention of the viral video from her past or the venomous anonymous emails. Yet by doing so, she rendered them insignificant, like a great wave that needs not roar to drown out whispers. Within hours, clips of Layla's remarks appeared on TikTok, then Twitter, then evening news broadcasts, and on LinkedIn, where leaders reposted them with captions of admiration. Hospitality Journal ran the headline, "From scrubbing toilets to leading a hospitality, culture overhaul." A veteran journalist wrote, "She represents not only a new generation but survival without losing one's kindness." Benjamin Rhodes did not speak at the press conference. He sat in the back row, arms folded, gaze softened. In his eyes was acknowledgement not just of what she had achieved, but that she had done it without anyone telling her how. When everyone filed out, Layla slipped backstage without applause. What she carried away was a quiet, profound feeling. You don't have to shout to be heard. Because sometimes the strongest counterstrike is preserving your own heart from turning to stone amid the coldest blows. But does the world have the patience to listen to those who do not scream? Dear audience, please relax for a moment, or take a sip of water, and stay tuned for the next unexpected twist. Comment 1 if you found this story meaningful, so we know you're still with us. Less than half a year after Layla officially took on the role of cultural advisor, Luxedge, once emblematic of outdated practices and unspoken social hierarchies in the hospitality industry, had become a flagship model, prompting other corporations to take stock of themselves. The strategy Layla proposed bore the modest name, "Grow from Within," yet its substance was bold. It not only launched leadership training programs for frontline staff, but also elevated those once deemed not one of us into positions of real influence. Gatekeepers, receptionists, line cooks, all were encouraged to learn, to advance, and to contribute to company policy. No more above or below, only people collaborating to run a system in which everyone's dignity was recognized. The results were unmistakable. Turnover dropped by 37%. Guest satisfaction scores soared. Internal reports of cultural conflicts nearly vanished. And beyond the numbers was a change in how people looked at one another, seeing collaborators, not casts. The media dubbed Layla the space creator, not because she invented something new, but because she restored opportunity to those who had been denied it. But not everyone caught the tailwind. Whitney, Layla's former manager and the same person who leaked that old video, now faced the very issues she had scorned. An internal investigation, sparked by multiple prior complaints of bias and manipulation, ultimately led to Whitney's termination. No fanfare, no honor. Just an email cutting her access and a 12-minute meeting. Still, the world kept turning, and sometimes its cruelty lies in its fairness. At a major fundraising event in New York drawing top industry figures, Whitney appeared as a nominal guest under a small HR organization she'd just joined. She didn't know Layla would also be present not merely as a speaker, but as the face of a new corporate culture mandate for the entire sector. When Layla entered the hall, soft light fell across her shoulders. Not the rigid posture of someone clinging to strength, nor an eyes-wide-open display of power, just a woman who knew exactly where she was headed. She carried no triumph. She carried a stillness that forced others to listen. Whitney saw her from afar, but lacked the courage to look away. Her hand tightened around her wine glass. Her gaze dropped. She thought she was ready to confront Layla, but no one taught her how to face kindness. Layla approached without a trace of tension. She stopped before Whitney. There they stood, two women who once embodied irreconcilable worlds, now sharing the same space, their wounds no longer bleeding. Layla offered no reproach. She asked no apology. She simply held out her champagne flute to Whitney, her calm gaze so gentle that turning away felt impossible. Then she spoke only one sentence, as if translating her very heart. There are languages that need no translation, like the way we choose to treat each other. No reply was needed. Between them, what was laid down made the air palpably softer, though not a sound was uttered. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps bitterness, but certainly it was set aside. Whitney did not lift her head, yet in her tear-glazed eyes, one saw a belated acceptance, and perhaps the beginning of something unnamed. Because sometimes justice is not in punishment, but in no longer needing retribution. But do all wounds require an apology, or just someone calm enough not to wait for one? That morning, the Florida sky shifted seasons without warning. The April rain fell lightly on the glass facade of the National Education Council building, leaving behind blurred streaks as if someone had written a message, then quietly erased it. In the 8th floor room overlooking Central Park, Layla sat before her computer screen, reading project proposals sent from remote schools, each line a story still unfinished, waiting to be heard. 2 years had passed since she first appeared in the Culture First campaign, and something in her life had changed forever. Not success, not fame, but the way she viewed hurt, not as something to avoid, but as ground that needed naming in order to heal. From that belief, Layla created Healing Languages, a language teaching program for children in minority communities across America. Yet, in her classes, students learned more than Italian, Spanish, or French. They learned to name their emotions in more than one tongue, to understand that when you can say sad in 3 different ways, you no longer feel alone in your sadness. The children arrived with wary eyes, but left nodding firmly, as if they'd discovered that language could be a refuge. For Layla, nothing was more worthwhile. Then, one slow afternoon, amid countless proposal emails and thank you notes, she saw a familiar name quietly listed among the new course registrants. The subject line had no capitalization. The first sentence lacked punctuation. Whitney. She said nothing, did not open the email at once. She left it there on her screen like an envelope with no return address, knowing that choosing to receive it was itself a choice. Days later, while filming a new TikTok video for the program's account, Layla selected an excerpt from the Divine Comedy to read. Standing before a blackboard, book spine worn, she spoke in a slow, measured tone. Lasciate ogni speranza voi centrate. Abandon all hope, you who enter. She paused, eyes locking with the camera, then continued. But I choose to read it differently. Not as abandon hope, but step inside and find the hope you lost. The clip lasted just over 30 seconds, but spread across platforms within a day. People didn't merely listen, they stopped scrolling. For in her voice was something no machine learning could mimic, truth born from wounds properly named. Not long after, she opened Whitney's email. Its content was brief. No excuses, no apologies, just a straightforward line. I want to learn, not to forgive myself, but to understand why I never understood you. Layla read that line again and again, as if each word untied an old knot. She did not reply immediately, nor did she delete it. Whitney's first lesson took place over Zoom in a group of 7. Layla did not single her out or feign surprise. She simply began the session as always, with an exercise in naming emotions first in one's native tongue, then translating into the foreign language. Layla looked at each student on the screen, her gaze pausing on Whitney's small, silent face in the corner of the frame. And then, as if guided by an invisible thread, Layla spoke slowly. Forgiveness is not overlooking. It is removing the very thing that stops us from moving forward even when the other person never returns. In that moment, no one needed to ask for forgiveness. No one needed to admit fault. Yet, amid the words being typed, a door quietly opened. For some wounds never disappear, but those same wounds teach us which doors are worth reopening. We often judge someone by the position they occupy, forgetting that there are those who had to crawl through hell to get there. Layla did not become an icon because she was stronger than others, but because she chose not to let her wounds turn her into someone else. She doesn't need to shout to be heard, nor does she need anyone to bow down to feel victorious. True strength sometimes lies not in resistance, but in preserving the wholeness of our hearts, even after they've been trampled upon. If you have ever been judged by your background, fallen under poisonous words, or carried unnamed wounds in your heart, then Layla's story is also part of your own. Thank you for journeying to the end of this tale. If anything in this story has moved you to stillness, please leave a comment, share your feelings, or send this video to someone who needs a reason to believe in themselves once more. And don't forget to subscribe, because here we tell stories not just to hear, but to heal.